Welcome. Hello, I'm Father Mitch Packer. Welcome to Ewtn Live. We bring you guests from all over the world. And of course, today we're celebrating the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And this is important for our guests tonight because not only is Our Lady Guadalupe the patroness of both Americas, North and South America, and patroness, of course, of Mexico in a particular way, but she's also a mother who is concerned with life. And we really look to Our Lady Guadalupe as a source of intercession for the unborn. If you ever get a chance to look closely at the image, you can see that the Blessed Mother is with child. She's carrying the Christ child. And that's why the cincture is on her, and this is a sign of that. So we also look to her to be a patroness for the pro-life movement. Now, our guests tonight have a really great lot of input on that. They have a particular view of the world. They're presented here every week on EWTN. It's a view you should really take notice of because it's different from the other half of the population, namely the men. This is the ladies' point of view. So please welcome the ladies from EWTN's popular TV series, The Catholic View for Women. And this includes Janet Morana, Teresa, Tomeo, and right in the middle of it all, holding them apart from a fight maybe, is Elena Rodriguez.
Hi, Father.
Hey.
Hi, Father.
Hi, Father. Good to see you.
So good to see you. Good to see you. Great to be back, Father.
How do you like being in the middle of things there, Elena?
You know, it's good because you have the best of both worlds at
Well,
each of your sides.
Good answer.
See, and that's why she's in the middle.
That's right. Yeah.
More diplomatic than I. And you have your Our Lady Guadalupe shirt.
I
Good
do,
for you.
of course.
Wonderful.
Of course.
And you're getting ready more programs, right?
That's
Yes.
right. Yeah, absolutely.
What do you cover in this coming season?
Well, we're covering a lot of different topics, but I think two of the shows that are going to, I think, reach people the most are we're dealing with after suicide. Two shows. We interviewed Father Chris Alar, up from Stockbridge with the fathers up there, and he has a new book out that's available at the EWTN Religious Catalog called After Suicide. He personally had experienced his grandmother committed suicide, and during the course of the show, of course, I reveal that my brother-in-law committed suicide, so I had a personal experience, and both Elena and Teresa had friends. So we've discovered, just talking about this topic, that there's so many people out there that have faced this problem and yet do not understand the church's teaching. There used to be this myth back, as you know, Father, where people thought if you committed suicide, that was it. There was no hope. You couldn't have a Catholic Mass, couldn't be buried in a Catholic cemetery, and that's far from the truth. So in this series, through Father Chris, these two shows, we really unpack the truth about suicide. And then the good part is it gives, how does the family heal afterwards?
Yeah.
So I think that of all the shows that we did, all 13, I think those two are going to address something that we just don't hear talked about, really. It reminded me personally of, abortion and Silent No More, that the women were silenced. Well, really, how many people talk about suicide? I can remember when my brother-in-law committed suicide, it was almost like a hush thing. The family didn't really talk about it. Matter of fact, the first few weeks after he died, they said it was an accident. They wouldn't even say it was suicide, So I think by addressing this, we're going to be reaching people who are feeling the same way and hear about how we can heal after this. I think will be so important.
Yeah, and I think because the title of the show is A Catholic View for Women, we're always looking at this, as my friend Al Cresta from Ave Maria Radio says, everything through the lenses of Scripture and the teachings of the Church. So in the world, in the news stories we've had in the past few years, major celebrities that have committed suicide, when you look at them from the outside, they have everything. They have the money, they have the fame, they have the home, they have what looks like the perfect life. You have Anthony Bourdain, you had Kate Spade, and a few years ago back, you had Robin Williams. And yet, when you read the articles, this is what we were talking about on the set in preparation for the show, when you read the articles, it's all about their background. Maybe they're a little bit depressed, but it doesn't go deeper as to what may have been the cause in terms of was there whether they're struggling with something, maybe the lack of God in their life. No one ever talks about that. And yet if you look at the surveys and if you dig a little bit deeper, they did reveal to some people that they felt very, very alone and that life had no meaning. So that says a lot. Yeah.
And we also reflect upon the teachings of the church and the myths out there about what people believe, what the church believes about suicide and about suicide victims. And we also talk about the mourning of the immediate relatives and friends who are left behind, and we provide some resources and solutions as well to help coping with that process.
I mean, and the church still continues to teach that thou shalt not kill includes not killing yourself.
Right.
You know, I think it's important that we, you know, communicate that this is not something the church condones.
Right.
And in fact, a lot of the rules against, you know, the strong clarity against suicide came over against a Roman culture where when you got embarrassed, the only honorable way out was to commit suicide. That's a very different situation where you're committing suicide out of pride.
Right.
And you're not dealing with some of the other struggles. A lot of people have mental issues.
Right, depression.
Mental illness,
And,
depression.
sometimes physical illnesses that distort their ability to think and to make decisions and wide variety of things. And we also have to distinguish that from the attempt to the state to encourage suicide.
Euthanasia, right.
Yeah, you know, legally. I had said years ago when the health care bill was started under President Obama, there was a line in an interview with Nancy Pelosi on ABC News. George Stephanopoulos was interviewing her. And she said, oh yeah, we have to have abortion and birth control included in the health care bill. Think of all the money we're going to save. And I said then that if they want to save money in the first year of life, which is the second most expensive year, then the health care bill will want to save money in the most expensive, which is the last year of your life. That's your most expensive year medically.
Right.
And so they'll push it. That's not what you're saying the church thinks is okay or anything like that at all.
No.
But the church does understand mercy in these situations where a person is not thinking clearly,
right.
not premeditating this, but is going through a lot of other kinds of pressures through drug use and distortion.
And that's what Father Elar lays out in the two parts, and that's why we wanted to have him both as a wonderful priest who's been on this network many times, but also as someone who had experienced suicide in his family, and someone that he was very close to. Because I think it's different if someone understands how you feel because you actually have gone through that experience. So I think Father Chris does an excellent job. And then we had fun talking about what kind of fun talk. We did 2 shows on family feuds, and we're not talking about the fun game show.
No.
Yes.
We talk about relationships and feuding, and first of all, one show about forgiving mother. And, you know that not everyone has a good relationship with a mother, and we've highlighted that in those situations we still have a heavenly mother, and how that can be very healing to look to our heavenly mother. And we had some solutions that we drew on both from the Catechism and other resources that how people can deal with this difficulty in the family. And we actually opened up, Teresa and I, about some of our, you'll have to watch the shows, about some of our family difficulties. Because I think, you know, Father, when you're in this situation.
Your families are not in a feud with each other.
No.
Just, okay, I want to get all the antecedents clear.
But there are some strange relationships.
Strange
so we're very honest
sadly,
about that.
Right.
Sadly. And so, you know, what we want to say is we don't live perfect worlds either. You know, just because, you know, we're on TV and, you know,
in
out
ministry.
there and in ministry doesn't mean we don't have our own difficulties and hardships to deal with.
that
Everybody
true?
thinks that people are in ministry
This
like
isn't us in
everything's
Harriet
perfect.
everywhere?
No,
Right,
it's
yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So Father, like you say, I'm not scared.
Yeah.
We are not scared to address these
Address
topics.
things.
They are very personal to us. We know they're very personal to our viewers.
Yeah. Right.
And we also want to research and present the hopeful side, the resources, the healing side, the positive side to overcoming these problems that are so common in our everyday lives.
Yeah, see, that's the other side of all this, is it's why we're Catholic. You know, our Lord wants us to spread a good news that he cares about these situations.
That's right.
And he wants us to get closer to him to find healing in family problems and terrible things like suicide, etc.
Yeah, I also think too, what we point out in these shows is that you may not be able to fix, and most of the time you're not going to be able to fix every single problem in your life. Sometimes people come at it, and Janet and I spoke about this on the show, about the family feuds, always trying to fix it. There's a broken relationship. We have to fix it. We have to get that straightened out. But as I learned through my spiritual director and the broken relationship I have with my older sister, I can only control what I can do. I can pray for her, I can keep the door open, but I can't force her to have a relationship with me if she doesn't want to. I can't fix that because it's a two-way street. And people have to understand that you may have to live with an estranged relationship. It may not be the perfect situation, but you can still have peace. You can have peace in your own heart. You can forgive that person, and you can ask them to forgive you for what you may have done. But a lot of people approach it that I have to fix it, I have to get it straightened out. It may not be that way. Hopefully it will if you continue to pray and maybe if the person opens up. But you just basically have to offer it up to God and make sure that your heart's in the right place. As long as you're not spewing anger toward that person or holding grudges, and that you continue to pray for them and keep the door open, then you're doing what you're called to do. And that's okay. And if it doesn't get fixed, it's not necessarily your fault. And a lot of people don't look at it that way. They think, well, I'm the Catholic, I'm the one who's supposed to fix everything.
Yeah, and sometimes, I don't know if I didn't see what you've been taping, but sometimes the more you try to get in there and fix it,
The worse it gets.
The worse it gets, yes.
Yeah, because then they can, sometimes there's certain individuals who might think, oh, they really want to fix it, I'll show them. They're not fixing me. And they can prolong it just
backfire.
to be antagonistic.
Right. Yeah, sometimes you have to take that step back. But the main thing is that you have forgiveness for whatever you feel is the problem. Forgiveness is number one. You attempt reconciliation, but if they close the door, you continue to let them feel that there is an open door and you have forgiven them, and you continue to pray about the situation. That's all you can do. But we also, in all these episodes, we point out that the best thing is to seek spiritual direction, and counseling too. I know in my situation, I did go through counseling a little bit to try to, help the situation. And I think that's very important, that we have to feel we can do that.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that people need to realize, and I think they know this deep down, but that God provides. That if you don't have a relationship with your blood sister, he does give you other sisters. Like Janet and I call each other sisters now. We send each other, when we send birthday cards,
We
it's
send sister cards.
Christmas cards, it's sister, because
cards.
we had a similar situation
Right.
in our family where we were rejected by our sisters. And so now God has given us this relationship, and God will really help you see that there are other ways to have a different relationship. And it's in some ways for me, because I love my sister and I pray for her, but she's not into the faith anymore. As a matter of fact, she's way on the opposite side of the spectrum with abortion and these key issues, which probably part of the reason she doesn't speak to me. But what Janet and I have in terms of when we talk about our faith, we talk about pro-life issues, we talk about where we're speaking. There's that bond that's just so different and so much stronger, even in some ways, if you just have a blood relative who's not on the same page with the faith.
Yeah. And
Elena?
We also talk about how to protect the younger ones from the family
That's what I'm
feuds.
trying to do, let you talk too.
Well, thank you. and so because we see the effect of family feuds among the adults, really inflicting a conflicting view in those who are younger, who are trying to grow up, and their whole world is torn apart because you have this concept that family is unity, is harmony, and that's not true in all families. So we also talk about how to not how to protect them from the hatred and to help them see and be forgiving and be loving to other members of the family that may not seem as nice as they should be, so that we don't perpetuate this cycle of hatred in the next generation of the family.
Generational.
But we do have a lot of fun. We don't want to make people think it's all depressing. These are real.
I'm not depressed. I'm having a good time.
But we have a lot of fun on the set, and we laugh at ourselves because there's a lot to laugh at. And it's just a really good camaraderie between the three of us. And we did a really fun show about looking for Mr. Right. And we turned to her to talk about what it's like being single.
Well, and of course, I'm
single.
still single, so can I talk about how to find Mr. Right?
I was just going to ask
But
that.
I have a lot of experience in what it is while you are.
Well, so far it sounds like the experience is all with Mr. Wrong.
Well, or Mr. Absent, because he's not there yet.
Yeah.
And of course, Elena said the one question she started hearing about is, so Elena, when are you getting married, right?
Yes. Well, hurry up. You're not getting any younger.
Your biological clock is ticking.
I've heard how many times. Yes. And you need to keep your eyes open. What are you doing about it? You need to stop worrying. I have a lot of advice from people who mean the best.
They mean well.
They mean the best.
But don't bring up the right guy.
But
all their advice, still not the right guy.
And then you have the people who have the best intentions. Oh, we'll find one for you. We'll find one for you. Well, yes.
Well, let me ask you. Does he have to speak English?
No,
or
if
Spanish?
If he speaks Spanish, that'd be very good too.
But if I find a guy who speaks only Arabic.
Arabic.
You better watch, Elena, because now, this is like almost like an announcement. You might be getting emails from people.
We were actually thinking of putting her number up on the screen.
No, don't do that.
But, we also address not just looking for Mr. Right, but also some people then feel called to the single life. And they're very happy and content like that.
Yeah.
And we address that too.
That's a vocation.
And that's a vocation. So we kind of covered both of that. Discernment. Right. And then we did some shows too about, we did something about the Pew Research report that came out a few months ago. And
which one was that?
It was very surprising, some of the results, because most people think people don't go to church anymore because they don't like the priest preaching, or they're just mad at the church, or so forth. And the results show that people who go to church, it said at least two to four times. So either they go every Sunday or at least check in at least twice a month. They said the most people, the reason why they go to church is to have a relationship with God. And that was great.
Yeah.
And
well, see, here's the thing that amazes me. That's news to them.
Hello.
That was like a Time magazine cover article back in the 90s. Boys and girls are different.
Really? Newsflash. Yeah.
Well, they go to church to have a relation with Jesus.
But here's one for the priests. And then a big majority said they actually value the sermon that they hear at the service.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So for all the priests out there, keep preparing those good homilies because the people want it. They're thirsty for it.
And they want spiritual meat.
That's
right.
They
don't want just
fluff
nice.
They don't want fluff and stuff.
Not nice.
Substance.
That's right.
Yeah, so in that show, we really delved into this whole report and talked about some of the surprises, which, like I said, stay tuned. There's more surprises. You'll have to tune in next season to get them. But
that's good.
And then we just had some fun on some of the shows. They were a few lighthearted shows, not all heavy.
God walks among the pots and the pans.
I really enjoyed
that.
God walks amongst the pots and the pans. She's my favorite saint. And when I was in Avila a few years ago, I knew that quote of hers, but they actually have it in the kitchen in one of her convents in Avila. And so we based that on a mom who actually ministers to other stay-at-home moms by having conferences online, so mothers don't have to leave their kids and if they want to go hear a Catholic speaker. So,
and for folks who don't know, St. Teresa of Avila is one of the greatest mystics. She's a doctor of the church.
Doctor of the church, right.
And a great mystic with profound depth.
And yet simple, right?
God is found in the pots and the pans.
Right. So he's found in everything that you do. When you're in the kitchen, you offer it up, as my mother Rosie says, offer it up and put it at the foot of the cross. And offer it up.
She's not from Alabama, right?
No, Jersey City.
Jersey City.
But that was a fun show.
And of course, on the show, they talked about how, I'm such a good baker. and they talked all about my Christmas cookies.
Oh, the Christmas.
Yes.
Janet's famous
my famous
cookies.
Did you
Christmas
make
cookies.
some?
Well, we're thinking
It's
of having
only
her make her
December
cookies. They
12th.
have a
I didn't start
fundraiser.
making them yet.
Okay.
Yes.
As soon as I get home from taping
I can
from the
only
show,
hope.
I'll
I can
start
only
baking.
hope.
Well,
The best,
I'll send
Father,
you some.
the best cookies. So we thought maybe she's probably going to get like all kinds of emails between Catholic
give
View
the
and this show.
recipe.
Maybe we can have like a fundraiser for EWTN through the
There you
cookie
go.
sales.
The cookie sales.
They're the best.
Now, I'll send
Yeah.
you the recipe. I'll send you cookies, and for the viewers, I'll send you the recipes. How's
Oh,
that?
there you go.
We'll put it on the website.
I guess
Yeah.
she's heard of my baking.
But you know, Father, there's going to be a first coming up for
Yes.
you in January. isn't
Yes,
there?
that's true. That's true.
Because Father Pavone has invited you to take part in the. First of all, you're going to be getting an award for all your speaking of the life issue for decades, especially here on the network, and you're going to give a talk at the prayer service, which is the largest prayer service in Washington, D.C., the day of the March for Life, which in 2019 will be Friday, January 18th. It's at DAR Constitution Hall. Starts at 8:30. It's free. Come on in.
It's a good price.
It's free. And it's comfortable seats, too. It's warm. And it's not far from the rally. So you come there at 8:30. We have everyone out by 10:30. And like we said, we're very honored that you've accepted the invitation.
Well,
And I
it's-
think, Father, you have to tell everyone, this is your first time coming to the March for Life, right?
Right. I always describe myself as the Cinderella team. I stay here at home while my Franciscan stepbrothers go to the ball.
So, but
So
we
that
thought it was too many years.
usually the friars go to the
Right.
march,
Right.
and they're taking part. Well, I'm usually doing programs back here.
And they're
Right.
helping out. They're
Oh,
helping
yeah,
out in
yeah,
the
they
Valley
really
with my
are.
great photographer, Mike
Very
Soleri,
hard.
who's
Not-
always my street photographer for the
Very
March for
hard
Life.
working.
And not only in Washington, but also in San Francisco,
Right,
they're
the
going
Walk
to be
for Life.
going.
Right.
Life and
So
Life
you know
and
that
Life.
they, but it's you know, because it's you know, it's after Wednesday, I'll be able to fly out and get there in time.
Dress warmly.
Yeah.
Of course,
Dress
this past year, though, it was the warmest we've had
Ever.
in like in like 10 years. It was amazing. You normally I
great.
have like 3 layers of clothes on, out there all day reporting, but we had our coats off. It was sunny. It must have been like 65 degrees, but don't expect that this year because that was just
I'll
a
just
weird
watch
thing.
the weather reports.
Yeah,
So-
but no, what you have to
do.
do after you go to the prayer service, Janet will bring you directly over to the EWTN booth and we'll go live and we can do a little kickoff maybe with you first
And
thing
then
in
you're
the
going
morning.
to march with Father up Constitution Avenue with Father Frank.
Great.
And when you get to the Supreme Court, you're going to say the opening prayer for the
We're
Silent
planning
Memorial
your whole day,
gathering.
no
Your whole
worries.
day,
We have
no
your whole
worries.
itinerary planned out.
Anything else you need to know about my schedule? Just consult with
Consult,
these ladies.
yeah, we'll give it out. But one
I've
important
often
thing,
said
Father.
you don't have to be married for ladies to tell you what
What's
to
right.
do.
You
That's
go
right.
here, you go here. We got it all
Right.
taken care of.
But one important thing, Father, I want all the viewers to know, if you have a bus coming to Washington and you want to be part of the prayer service, just go to our Priest for Life website, priestforlife.org. Let us know, and there's plenty of seats, and we're hoping that people can make it part of their bus plan to be dropped off at DAR Constitution Hall.
And I think part of the importance of this, we're going there for prayer.
Right.
We're going there to support life. And we've seen a tremendous increase of pro-life mentality among young people in
people,
particular.
that's right.
Both because they feel like survivors, which
Right.
they are. It's
They
not
are.
a
They are
feeling.
survivors.
It's not a feeling, it's a reality.
It's reality.
And they have empathy with the children that should have been their cousins.
Right.
Sometimes they're siblings.
They're classmates.
Sometimes they're classmates,
Right.
they're friends. They're dead.
Yeah.
And so this is an important thing. And what a change from, I remember when Roe v. Wade came out, that the strongest supporters for abortion were males between 15 and 35.
Well, of course.
Of course.
Because it
very
was a way
convenient,
out of
right.
responsibility
Knows responsibility.
and out of consequences.
That's right. No consequence. Yeah.
But now there's a change.
Yes, there
It's a change
is.
of heart. It's not so cheap and simple. It's now something that's much deeper. And we've been going through a lot of difficult times in this past autumn,
Right.
this year. And the question of abortion is behind it.
Right.
We've seen a lot of folks who are pro-abortion express a lot of anger and hate.
Indeed.
We are to respond not with hate.
No.
We respond with prayer, concern, and a call to conversion for ourselves,
and for
more
them.
deeply, and for them.
And we know in the pro-life movement that many of the people that we see, and Janet and I were just, and Elena and I were just talking about this at lunch today, that many of those people, both women and men, who are reacting negatively, screaming and yelling and being very violent in some cases, even at the Supreme Court, where the women and men give their testimony, it oftentimes is coming from a place of pain.
Oh,
Because they haven't dealt with their abortion.
They haven't dealt with their
yet.
abortion.
Exactly.
And so
cause.
you realize that and you pray for them. And it's a lot of what we've seen in this past year with all the angst and the anger. And it's all about the A word. It's all about abortion. But we have to think, okay, how can we reach out to that person? Sometimes they'll accept it. I mean, I know, Janet, you've told stories before where when the women stand on the side of the avenue and say, I regret my abortion, there have women who have actually come up to them who, even with their own pro-choice signs, will come over to them and say, I regret my abortion too. And that there are a lot of women and men that are drawn in because of that statement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, you know, if
I think the earlier statement this year, sorry, but I just want to mention it along that line. You know, the call by Oprah, let's celebrate our abortions. No, sugar.
No.
That didn't go very well, though.
No.
How interesting is that? Isn't it interesting that Oprah, who's the queen, still considered the queen of all media, calling for women to celebrate their abortion, she received a great deal of backlash. And what's so sad about that is she's such a successful, beautiful woman, proud African-American woman, and she's done so much for women, but especially African-American women, in moving ahead. And yet, her own people are the #1 victim when it comes to abortion.
Directly targeted.
In terms of the numbers.
And she did this whole campaign. It was shout your abortion. And so what I did is, first of all, through our communications director, we tried to reach out to her people to say, okay, you want to tell women who've had abortions that think it's wonderful to shout it. Why don't you also let us have some women from Silent No More who regret their abortion? And we were, of course, not responded to. So then I wrote a blog about this, which ended up picking up another hashtag, which was Shout for Life. You know, because unfortunately they don't want to hear anyone who wants to say anything negative about abortion. And these are people who can talk about the physical damage, the psychological damage. These women have experienced abortion too, and yet they don't want to hear that.
But the numbers in the African American and the Hispanic community,
community
are
are
highest.
I know.
They're targeted.
Very much
They're
It's
specifically
genocide. I mean,
targeted.
it's just amazing. And then, of course, Alveda King, who works with Priests for Life and is out on the front lines, they won't even talk to her. Years ago, and I wrote about this in one of my earlier books, Extreme Makeover, she came to Detroit for the NAACP convention, Alveda King. And she went up to the microphone in the open mic, and they pulled her microphone because they knew she was going to talk. And this is, I'm hearing this because I live in the Archdiocese of Detroit. I'm hearing this, I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute. This is a niece of the great Martin Luther King Jr. She's at the NAACP convention in Detroit, one of the biggest cities in terms of moving forward for African American people. And they silence her at this convention. What's wrong with this picture? And then you have someone as prominent as an Oprah promoting Shout Your Abortion, something that is killing their people.
Directly.
The good news is that a good close friend of mine, Bishop James Lowe, from here in Birmingham, African American, who was inside 16th Street Baptist Church when they blew it up.
Wow.
He was a little boy in the boys' choir room next to where those 3 little girls were murdered by the Klan. And he said, Father, you have a lot of this data about what's happening to our African American children. And I need that. I've got to tell my people. And he's letting his people know, that African Americans are 13% of the United States population. But 36% of all abortions are African American children. And I think it's in New York City, 85% of all African American children are aborted. 15% get born, and 85% are aborted. And that's in a city where 60% of all children conceived in New York City are aborted. Same in Washington and Moscow. Isn't that an interesting link? That Moscow, New York, and Washington have the same abortion rate. But I don't know for black children in Washington, but in New York, it's even higher than the white community. because like I said, they're targeted.
And
we want to, we that's why we love black brothers and sisters, and we don't want them to be bringing their babies to be killed.
Right.
You know, we'll help with raising them.
Yeah.
And they're targeted by the abortion industry.
Yeah.
You know, there's more abortion clinics in neighborhoods that have black and Hispanic people living there.
Right.
And one example is in downtown LA within a 2-mile radius. There used to be about a dozen abortion clinics, a few have closed, but there's at least 8 still existing within a 2-mile radius in downtown LA, which is mostly a black and Hispanic population. So they're definitely, it's a deliberate targeting.
Oh yeah, well, and it goes back to Margaret Sanger.
Right.
She
That's
spoke
right.
to the Ku Klux Klan 5
right.
times.
Right.
You know, I don't know how some of these politicians can accept a Margaret Sanger award.
But they don't understand. They haven't been taught or educated, and they say, well, that was only early on in Margaret Sanger's career. She changed her mind. They come up with all kinds of crazy excuses and statements. And the whole thing about what we try to do with the Catholic View is to dispel so many of this myths. I mean, people have literally been brainwashed, especially on the area of abortion and contraception and everything else we're seeing now, the gender ideology, all this stuff. And this is particularly important for someone like myself who spent 20 years in the secular media, which continue to perpetrate so many of those lies every single day, especially what we saw earlier this year. So, yeah.
Well, we have to take a break.
Okay.
We'll be back. Again, take a look at the CatholicViewForWomen.com. That's all one word, thecatholicviewforwomen.com. You can also go to Facebook.com/The Catholic View for Women and watch their programs and have a lot of fun, but also get a lot of education and reflection and depth. But we'll be back to more of them in just a couple minutes, so please stay with us. Are you guys ready for some questions?
Sure.
Giddy
Start
up,
off with,
like you say.
lady first. Ma'am, why don't you come over here to the microphone? That way you don't have to shout. We'll just have you talk right into. Where are you from?
I'm from Destin, Florida.
Oh, it's a pretty place. Ever been down there?
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
The
of course-
sand is like sugar, isn't it? It looks
It's
like sugar.
or salt.
I go with sugar because everybody's so sweet down there. So anyway, what is your question?
Well, my heart breaks to think that any of our tax money goes for abortion. But my experience was that I gave someone some money to help them buy a new car, or a better car. And I found that his wife spent it for an abortion for her son, who got a girl pregnant. And that made me feel so bad that my money was used for that. And I can't imagine what it would feel like to have had an abortion myself and had paid for it. Because it hurt me that my money went for that.
Were you able to address that to the family? Were you able to talk
Only
to them about
the person
that?
I gave it to.
Yeah.
Yes.
I address this in my book, Shockwaves, which is, of course, available at the Religious Catalog. And I did a whole chapter on this about 2 aspects. First of all, friends don't let friends drive drunk. They wouldn't let friends have an abortion. But then there's those who, like this lady, unwittingly, in good faith, gave someone money and it ended up for an abortion. And I would say a good thing to do would be to name that child herself. You know, you can, in fact, memorialize that child, give humanity back to that child. You didn't have any guilt or, part of this abortion at all. But yet you can say, you know what, I'm going to name this child. You can pray about it. God might give you a sense, was it a boy or a girl that was aborted, if she knew that, and then name that child to give that child dignity again. And I know, I gave this a point in my book that someone had actually given someone money for an abortion and then had a change of heart, converted, you know, back to the Lord. And this person donates this exact amount of money that she gave her friend for that abortion to a pro-life organization every year on the anniversary of the abortion.
That's beautiful.
You know, so anyone out there who's watching or listening, if you did participate with a friend for an abortion, you can have healing too. You can actually go on a Rachel's Vineyard retreat, and that's what this lady could do too, where you can memorialize. You know, Rachel's Vineyard retreats, yes, it's women are there who've had abortions, men are there who've had abortions, but then we now have grandparents who either took a daughter for an abortion and were responsible for the abortion of their own grandchild, or in my case, like my daughter had an abortion, I had no knowledge of it, and then we went through healing together. So the Rachel's Vineyard retreats have now expanded, and now friends are coming who helped a friend get an abortion or didn't know and couldn't stop them. All these circumstances. When you go on that retreat, there's a physical scripture exercises you do, you memorialize the child, you can write a letter to that child, and again, it brings that humanity back, and you then can unburden yourself. So they can just go to rachelsvineyard.org, or another way to find out where the nearest retreat is, abortionforgiveness.com. Put in your zip code, and it will show you where the nearest retreat is to where you live. So anyone around the country, and around the world actually, because Rachel's Vineyard retreats are in over 70 countries, and it's been translated in over 20 languages, Father. So there's hope and help for everyone who might be watching or listening.
Yeah. Again, we want to see transformation.
Right.
In our own service for healing of people. It's not, you know, you see in some of the movies, there's one channel that has a lot of women-oriented movies, and they portray the Christian opponents of abortion as being judgmental and harsh. And
totally opposite.
No. They would like us to be that, then they could hate us more easily, but we want to help.
We reach out the hand of hope and healing, not condemnation.
If you want to keep the child, we want to help with that too.
Exactly.
You know, that's what the clinics do.
Well, the good news is that the pregnancy resource centers outnumber the abortion mills now.
That's right.
Is that right?
Yes. So they have for several years.
Yeah, there's over 3,000 pregnancy resource centers just here in the United States alone, and the number of abortion clinics is down to, I think it's under 700 now. Under 700, so it's almost a 3 to 1.
So it's under 700 abortion clinics.
Right, and over
3,000?
3,000 pregnancy resource centers.
Yeah.
And a matter of fact, in one of our shows at the Catholic View for next season, we highlighted the Obria medical model clinics, founded by Kathleen, and it's really a great thing, because what it does is it goes toe to toe with Planned Parenthood. Because what the idea is, this is a total Catholic modeled medical center, so they take care of a woman, all her medical needs. So they do STD testing. It becomes like your doctor. And the concept here is that when you do get in a pregnancy situation what you weren't expecting, well, you've been already going to Obria. So then
the trust is built.
The trust is
relationship,
built already. And you're not going to end up with an abortion clinic.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is Kathleen Ewtn Bravo is her name.
But see, so many of these stories that we're telling on the Catholic View don't make it into the secular media.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do, is to really get these stories out there, and even just basic information about abortion. My husband, who's, as you know, is a deacon, he's also a counselor, a sidewalk counselor in Detroit. And 2 years ago, before the presidential election, he was having a conversation with one of the other pro-life counselors, and they were talking about the impact of the election and what could happen depending on whomever got into office. And he just happened to mention what Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton gave us, just as a conversation. You know, they're standing outside talking, and he says he was talking about the fact that these two decisions gave us abortion through 9 months of pregnancy. And this lovely woman who had been there with him weekend after weekend praying outside the abortion mill had no idea. Right. She thought that we only allowed abortion in the first trimester. And so here is somebody in the pro-life movement, a beautiful sister in the Lord, who's out there every week praying, and she's someone who would be more educated than most people on the abortion issue, on the life issues, but she still did not realize the impact of Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton. And so sometimes we think that we're preaching to the choir. But I always say, if you looked at the choir lately, and still the choir needs practice, all of us need practice, and that's why we keep the information out there.
That's right.
Choir needs to learn how to read the notes.
That's right.
And other specifics like reversion of RU 486, which can be reverted if it is targeted quickly enough.
Yeah.
And
there's a special website for that. It's abortionpillreversal.com. And there's been over 500 pill reversals where babies have been saved so far. And this is where the woman goes into the abortion clinic for this. You can only do this about 9 weeks or less. You can't do it past 9 weeks of gestation. But she'll go into the clinic and they'll give her the first pill of RU486, and she goes home with the second dose that she has to take about 2 days later. And some of these women have a change of mind, change of heart. If you go back to the abortion clinic or call, they're going to say it's too late. The fetus will be deformed. You must do this. You must do that. It's too late. You must take the other pill. But what we're getting the word out is through abortionpillreversal.com is that it can be reversed. And there's doctors being trained, pro-life doctors all over the country now in the reversal process. And in fact, Dr. Matt Harrison, who's a medical advisor for Priests for Life, he pioneered this procedure with Dr. Delgado from San Diego. And so it's
I just had Dr. Delgado on my radio show 2 weeks ago.
So it's really spreading.
Yeah.
It's really spreading.
Yeah.
Also have to recommend that you get one of my former students who's a neonatologist in Michigan, Kalamazoo, Dr. Robin Pierucci. She's been on the network a number of times. And she works with very, very early stage children. I mean, she delivered a set of twins who were 21 weeks.
My grandnieces were 28 weeks.
Yeah, well, 21 is really close. But it was
small.
twins. They weighed 1 ounce each, but they were fine.
Fine, yeah.
Right.
And here's the thing that she noticed, because she wasn't always pro-life, but she came to Christ and had a real change. But you see, with these kids, she could see at 21 weeks when they're out of the womb and in the incubator, their personalities already distinct.
Yeah.
Right.
Every one of these little, premature babies, they have a personality that is their own, and they let you know what they think.
That's very sweet.
And it's ironic, Father, that there was a pain-capable bill that said that when a baby can feel pain, and all scientists will agree that when you get to that 20 weeks, that child can feel pain, right? So they were trying to pass this law.
Because the nervous system is developed well enough to feel it.
And so this law was last year where they tried to pass it, and guess what happened? They got it passed in the House, but in the Senate, it got blocked. They couldn't get enough votes. Remember, you needed that 60 majority. Of course, we don't have that yet. And they had to get those 60 plus votes to get it out of the committee on the floor for a vote. Now, this was to, like we're saying, protect babies from 20 weeks on. And like we've been saying, we know these abortions late term are occurring all over the United States. In fact, Priests for Life, we did undercover phone calls out there to abortion clinics in about 15 states. Live phone calls, they can go to our website and listen to them, where you could hear people make an appointment, healthy mother, healthy baby, for no reason at all. Then I just decided not to have this baby, or my husband lost his job and we can't afford another child. How many weeks are you? Oh, 30 weeks. Okay, you can come in tomorrow. It's a 2 to 3 day procedure. It's X amount of dollars, just with no care in their voice at all, very callous. And when you think, if we could get this bill, okay, onto the Senate floor, we know the House will pass it, onto the Senate floor, and we know President Trump will sign it into law, how many babies can we save from 20 weeks on? Because those babies are still being aborted.
And this should not be a one-party issue.
Right.
We want both parties to say, look, you guys don't agree on a lot of stuff.
Right.
You're fighting all the time. But can you have empathy for babies feeling pain?
No, but they can have empathy for lobsters. Did you hear what happened in Maine earlier this year? There was a
the Maine
big,
lobsters were...
Listen, this is a real story.
Really?
This is on my show. I did this. So it was a story where there was a truck full of lobsters being taken to a Maine restaurant, right? A truck crashes, and all the lobsters die. The PETA group in that area, it was actually appealing to the local government to have a memorial built, a granite memorial in honor of the lobsters. That's number one. Number two.
Wait. Who was paying for it?
Well, they were trying to appeal the government to pay for it. Okay, I don't know what's happened since. And then shortly after that, if that wasn't enough for you, true story, a restaurateur in the same state said because he was so worried about the cruelty to lobsters when they go into the pot, he was going to give them marijuana somehow before they actually went into the water so they wouldn't feel the pain. So we're all worried about lobsters, but we can't worry about babies.
Children.
What happens to the people who eat those lobsters with the marijuana?
I don't know. I didn't follow up on that question, but but seriously,
I just have to ask.
Yeah.
Well, now that
This is the insanity that's out there, though, that we try to bring forward, let people know about.
Now, the Priests for Life, Father, we're now located from New York. Over a year now, we're living in Florida. Father Pavone and I both moved down, and several of our staff. And in Florida, we have a lot of sea turtles. And there's signs posted on the beach that says, do not touch the sea turtles or their eggs. They are protected by state, local, and federal law. $25,000 if you smash the egg of a sea turtle. Well, Father Pavone always in his preaching always said, well, if in this country we don't have the right to smash a sea turtle, why do we have the right to smash a baby?
Yeah.
I want the sea turtles to live.
Of course we want the sea turtles to live,
great,
but we also want the babies.
Want the babies to live.
Right.
Now, we're one of the things we talk about abortion here, but we've been going through sort of round 3 in the church on sexual abuse within the clergy. The first round came in '92, then the Great Bishops' Meeting back in 2002 was around that second time they took that on, and it really did make a big difference. The number of cases of child sex abuse went way down, and so that's good. But now we're going through round 3, and old cases mostly being brought up, and also cases of abuse of adults or improper relationship with adults. Consenting or semi-consenting, but it's been scandalous. I don't know if all 3 of you, but I know you, Teresa, did something about a letter to Pope Francis.
Right. Mary Rice Hasson, along with several other women theologians, got together and wrote a beautiful letter, very loving, very respectful letter. And they asked me to be one of the main co-signers. And so there were several lead signers, myself and other women on the front lines who were out there regularly addressing Catholic issues. And in addition to the Catholic View, I have a radio show, as you know, on every day, which is on Ewtn, the Catholic Connection. And so she asked me to sign it. And at the end of a 2 or 3 month period, women from all walks of life, all Catholic, but the lawyers, moms, teachers, just all different areas of the country, they got close to 50,000 signatures. And it was a beautiful letter. It was very respectful. It was simply asking the Father to please address the allegations raised by Archbishop Vigano. And it went off to Rome, and we haven't heard anything since, but it was sent to the Vatican, and it was handed to I believe, the Secretary of State, from what I understand. So we're still waiting to see if there's going to be a response to that. But it was really well done. It was very respectful, and I wanted to read it first. And I knew with the women who were writing the letter that these are daughters of the church, like us. They're not going to disrespect the Pope or the hierarchy. It was just really pleading as mothers, as daughters, as sisters, women who love the church, women who work in the church, women who are raising families. We need these issues addressed. And it was, it got a lot of coverage in the secular media. I was very pleasantly surprised, and it really, I've never seen, in my 16 years as a Catholic talk show host, been in the media a long time, but 16 years in Catholic radio, I have never seen the laity respond the way they have since this scandal now broke back in June with former Cardinal McCarrick. People have started their own very successful mini lay apostolates, their own letter writing campaigns. The men came up with a very similar letter as the women, called Catholic Men United, which I think is still gathering steam right now. So there are all these different mini apostolates where people are saying, yes, we need to pray, yes, we need to fast, but I also need to do a little bit more than that. And so many people writing their bishops, and writing their bishops again, and writing the Pope. The laity need to realize that they have a voice. And that, what did Archbishop Fulton Sheen say? It's not going to be the bishops who save the church. It's not going to be the priests who save the church. It's going to be the laity who's going to help priests be priests and bishops be bishops, and that we're the ones who are going to turn things around. So I think there's a different attitude this time around than there was back in 2002. Yes. People were trusting the leadership and said, okay, if you're going to do this, we're going to back you on this. And from what I'm hearing from our listeners is that they feel very betrayed, because they trusted And yes, things change in terms of pedophilia, but we didn't know that there was, well, we knew some of it, we had heard a little bit about it, but then what's been revealed this past year is there's a whole nother level of this abuse problem. And that it goes way back, and that we saw in the Pennsylvania grand jury report, the patterns that led to a Theodore McCarrick began developing decades ago, which allowed these things to happen. So, but I'm very excited because the lady's very involved, like I've never seen them before.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I want to let people know they can take a look at that letter and add their own names to it. Again, especially for ladies, it's Letter to Pope Francis from Catholic Women. And it's at CatholicWomen'sForum.org. CatholicWomen'sForum.org. You said there's another one for men?
CatholicMenUnited.org, yes.
CatholicMenUnited.org. I think this is very necessary. And there needs to be the idea that we can sort of let things slide is wrong.
Well, I think we
It's
have to
not.
keep this story front and center. I mean, Al Cresta and I on Cresta in the Afternoon and Catholic Connection, which both shows are syndicated through Ewtn, we've been covering this story every day since the story broke. And we have so many emails and so many things are happening that we're actually developing a program that we're going to do at least locally and then maybe put it online, just answering people's questions. Because the biggest thing people feel is that the trust is gone, unfortunately. The trust is gone, and that trust has to be rebuilt. And I'm not sure, with all due respect to the hierarchy, that a lot of bishops realize just how broken that trust is. I'm talking to people every day, victims, family members, just average Catholics who are saying they're not walking away from the church, because these are our viewers and listeners, but they're done in terms of they don't want to hear from the bishops. They want to see action. They want to see permanent change.
I just received a message from a layman who said, you know, we're struggling, he and some priests are struggling to stay Catholic, given what the bishop was doing. I said, the problem isn't you guys, you're doing fine staying Catholic. It's the bishop who's having trouble. Right. And they better earn that trust. This is not something that people are going to take for granted.
But how do you get that across to them? I've had conversations again with various leaders, and they just don't seem to get it. I mean, I've had some respectful but very strong conversations with some, and they just still do not seem to get that the laity are just, they've lost trust. And people they're not walking away, at least our listeners aren't, but they're not going to back down on this story, and I don't know if they realize that.
And I think the other side of that is that the lay people who are staying put, as I just said to that friend, you know, this is something, you're being a good Catholic. The bishop is the one having trouble. Get him to straighten up right now. Mm-hmm. That has to be our attitude. The idea that we would leave, no. That would be too easy for some of these bishops.
Yeah. Right.
We're not going to be that easy on them. We're staying put.
Also, why should we let someone, a few, force us away from the Eucharist? I'm not leaving the Eucharist.
Don't leave Jesus
I'm not
because of
leaving
Judas.
Jesus because of Judas or because of problems. I'm not going to walk away from the sacraments. I'm not walking away from the teachings that saved my marriage and saved my life. I'm not doing it, and I'm not going to keep quiet about it either.
Exactly.
One of the important things, Father, in all this is to stay informed. To stay informed, to tune in to all the EWTN services. Al Cresta, a Catholic Connection with Teresa, Tomeo. There's also EWTNnews.com, our website, which has continued coverage of all this. The Register at ncregister.com as well, continued coverage of all this. And also EWTN News Nightly.
And Catholic News Agency.
And Catholic News Agency merged with EWTNnews.com.
Right.
Which also means that not only do you stay informed, but sometimes if you have information, not rumors, not false rumors, not wild guesses,
but
you have
actual
concrete
Pass
data.
it on.
Right.
Pass it on to so that it'll be embarrassing. Yeah, and they'll get them to straighten up.
That's right.
Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you,
We are
Father.
flat out of time, but it's the CatholicViewForWomen.com or Facebook.com, the Catholic View for women. And I want to bless you and all of you. May Almighty God bless you. By the intercession of Our Lady of Guadalupe, keep us ever committed to Jesus, our Savior. May God bless you, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Thank you all
Thanks,
very
Father.
much
Thank you,
for
Father.
being here. And you can make this show possible by your generous gifts. So keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill. We'll be able to pay our bills, including for these wonderful programs. Thank you, and God bless.